Healthcare consumers, providers, creators, and advocates. Health and wellness should be everyone's top priority, and it's a dynamic topic, complex and sensitive to a vast array of factors from a local to an international scale. The healthcare industry is now at the forefront of everyday life and hopefully on the cusp of a renaissance. We're glad you've joined us for this series that explores the ideas shaping healthcare. I'm Minta Ferguson, healthcare architect and director of the Strategic Facility Planning Group, McMillan Pazdan Smith Advisors. And this is Ideas Shaping Healthcare. Today I'm joined by Deon Lewis. He's the Director of Engineering at CaroMont Health here in Gastonia, North Carolina. He is a veteran of the U.S. Navy, and after his service, he went to Clemson University, where he received a degree in mechanical engineering. After working at different hospitals ranging in size from an independent 188-bed facility to a 1,000-plus bed healthcare system, Deon has been with CaroMont Health for 10 years. He enjoys developing efficient processes, building teams, and supporting the clinicians that care for the residents of Gaston County. He has a great personality and gives us all a laugh, which I'm sure we're going to experience today. Lastly, he supports education to fellow healthcare engineers and has served as president of the North Carolina Healthcare Engineering Association for 2019 and 2020. We're also joined today by Lisa Yagla, project architect with McMillan Pazdan Smith, who has been working very closely with our guest Deon on the design and construction of a new acute care tower, which is actually a vertical expansion of an existing building on campus. It is being built above home of perioperative services. She is a very focused and organized individual and someone who invests not just in the project, but also the client, patient outcomes, and the community benefit. Thank you, Lisa and Deon, for joining me today. We want to talk about vertical expansion today, and I think a lot of times it's a question that comes up for every hospital, every facility manager, director of engineering, CEO, COO. They wonder, in their master plan or feasibility study, can we go vertical somewhere? Some are really open to it. Some are really hesitant about it. But it's something that I've come across many times, and it's something that we deal with pretty frequently. I think the options really in expansion are you've got new facility construction, so a new building somewhere on greenfield. You have a horizontal expansion, so that's an addition to a building. And then you have, of course, a vertical expansion. So you're building on top of an existing building. And it's something that usually, if you're doing that, it was designed to be built vertically, to be added on to, right? So there's engineering, there's infrastructure built into it early that says it can go up. And if it wasn't, it still can be possible, but there's some major engineering feats to do that. So that's just a little background around the challenges that I think our hospital systems and facility owners are dealing with. And Deon, I know that you guys are working on a vertical expansion project. And Lisa, maybe you could start with just giving us a description of the project, and then we'll get into how it's going.
Sure. So thanks, Minta, for allowing Deon and I the opportunity to talk about this project, because to your point, vertical expansions are not as common. And so this particular project is on the campus at CaroMont Regional Medical Center in Gastonia, and we are currently under construction. It's a new 4-story patient tower, and this new critical care tower project is a vertical expansion that is located above an existing 3-story building. And within this existing building is the surgical suite. So we're building on top of 12 ORs, including their hybrid. And it was required, and it has remained operational during construction. So that was a key constraint on this project, was maintaining the operation of the ORs. Each floor will have 26 patient rooms. We're building 3 floors. We're building 4 floors, but the 3rd floor will be a shell. So 3 floors, 26 patient rooms per floor, with support space, staff space, and dedicated family space. And another key component to this project is our bridge. So we're connecting our new 4th floor with the existing 4th floor, and that's a level transition. And that plays into some of our constraints by going vertical, but it is a key operational driver to the project.
Right. That's a huge project. I mean, it's over perioperative services, it's a high revenue generating part of the hospital. It's very critical. It's acute care, and it's got to remain operational. And then, of course, you're building. It's not just one or two floors. I mean, it's several floors on top of it. So it's a major campus project. So, Deon, could you give us a little background about your campus and perhaps how you arrived at deciding to go vertical?
I'm going to throw out a word just to think about it for down the road, interstitial space. That's going to come into play with the success of this project. But I want to give you just a little background into CaroMont. We are a large independent hospital. It's a 435-bed licensed hospital in Gaston County, North Carolina, built in 1970. And it's had a couple of expansions over the years. In 1990, we built the Northeast expansion. In 1998, we did the Southeast expansion. In 2005, we did the West expansion. So those mean nothing to you. It's just those just identify different projects we had. But just think about the original hospital that we built in 1970. At that time, it was the state-of-an-art hospital for any hospital being built. It was very progressive in its design, and if it was not the first, it was one of the first hospitals to be built entirely with private patient rooms. There was no semi-private or group bays of patients in that hospital. So it was very progressive at the time. Gaston County back in those days was considered the textile capital of the world. It was very, very vibrant and thriving community. So it was strong, and they wanted a state-of-the-art hospital. So the builds that we had, the first one in 1990, so we went 20 years from when we originally built the hospital to doing our first major expansion. And that was one of the areas that we needed was labor and delivery. Obviously, a 1970 hospital didn't have the labor and delivery capabilities that populations wanted to see today. And then in 1998, with that build, that's when we built the Southeast expansion, is which we're building over right now. And of course, going back to the original hospital, it's the perioperative services, the ORs. Obviously, ORs had advanced so much over the decades that we had to expand our OR capability. And then the last thing that we wanted to expand in 2005 was our women's services. So those were the three major components we had. So look at those time frames, 20 years between the first major build, then 8 years, then 7 years for the additional builds. And now it's been 16 years since CaroMont has had a major construction build. So what is lacking in the progression that we've gone through over these decades? Well, we have private patient rooms, gold standard. Today, they're smaller than they need to be, but they were gold standard at the time, and they've still functioned quite well. We expanded ORs and labor delivery. The one area that we've been lacking on is the ICU, the critical care population that we have. So for the 10 years I've been with CaroMont, we've been talking about the vertical expansion, or not the vertical expansion, but we need to increase or enhance our critical care, intensive care population. How do we do that? So that was a lot of background going to your question about the campus, but I wanted to get your head in the mind of where CaroMont is, and also being an independent hospital, we have to guard our resources pretty carefully. We're not a system. We don't have a lot of fluff to play with, and capital is critical. And we need to be financial viable and have a good financial base to continue our expansion. So with that, CaroMont sits on I don't remember the acres off the top of my head, but it's a nice campus. It's a land lease, from the county, like a lot of the county hospitals were back in the day. And we've had those expansions. It has a robust infrastructure to support the hospital, and we've been able to keep that upgraded over the years. But with that, our forefathers that built that Southeast expansion knew that they built it, and Lisa's going to talk to this some coming up. No, it was built for vertical expansion. A campus, as Minta said, there's only a couple ways you can get more space. You can either do it inside, you can add more breadth and take up square footage and expand onto your campus, take up more dirt space, more square footage in your property, or you can go vertical. Our forefathers that built the Southeast expansion knew that probably the best way to expand this hospital and this campus was to go vertical, because the campus is only so big. The wider you get, the more patients have to walk to get to services. It just turns into a nightmare. So the Southeast expansion was built for future expansion, but the big driver, as Lisa said, it's over our operating rooms. And for the longest time, what drove us away from doing a vertical expansion on that was just the disruption it was going to take, just disruption we were going to have associated with an expansion over the operating suite. We just knew that was going to be a nightmare to try to mitigate through, to go through the vertical inspection. So that's sort of a really fundamental foundation of what CaroMont property looks like and where the leadership was in making this decision to go vertical. So
you mentioned something there at the end that building over surgical suites perioperative is a bit of an inconvenience, and it prevented you from doing it for quite some time. Staff, I think they're probably motivated for some new acute care rooms. That's something that's probably something they can get motivated about. But how did you create a team and create alignment with staff and physicians to embrace the change and kind of work through perhaps expectations during this construction and expansion, inconveniences, perhaps, if you want to call them that, or challenges that they might go through?
And that is a great communication. And the team, that's sort of critical to pulling this thing off. And Lisa was very, we partnered with MPS early on, so we knew what was going on. We had a good architectural team, as long as our engineering team to support this build. So I'm going to let Lisa chime in just a little bit about the teams that we developed.
So when I came to the project, I was really impressed. I came a little bit beyond concept and came in at beginning of SD. And I was really impressed by what the hospital had already established. They had an operations planning team, and that operations planning team was partnered with their PI, the process improvement group, and they also had taken the time to clearly identify their critical success factors for this project. And we had those laminated and kept those with us throughout the project. And part of that operations planning team, that was senior leadership, and that was leadership from every division within the hospital. So we had physical therapy, which they had a lot of concerns about what the furniture looked like and what the lifts would do in the rooms. And we had logistics, food and nutrition, and pharmacy. Everyone who would be on this floor, even if they're on the floor for just a couple minutes,
serving the floor.
If they were serving the floor in any way, if they were transport from imaging, everyone came to a meeting and had a chance to say what was happening in current state and what would be preferred in ideal state. And we have referenced that throughout the entire project. And that really was some of the, when we'll get into this a little bit later, but that was some of the key drivers of some of the changes that we made throughout design that really helped this new build facilitate operations. And in the end, the architecture really is always going to bend to the operations. We are locked in our location, and we have to use the existing facilities and connect all that together so that they can all work. And we even had a patient advocate group, so we really touched every person who would be in this facility and made sure that they had a chance to impact this design, so that when we open this building, everyone's had a chance to be an ambassador for it, hopefully bringing everyone into alignment for the opening of this project.
So Lisa, you said a couple of things, and I don't want to just browse over some of these that seem so simple, but they are not so simple, like critical success factors. Guys, as you heard in my bio, I've been in healthcare for 20 plus years, and I've worked in a lot of different places. And I'm fortunate enough to have done this already. I've already built over top of an operating suite in one of my locations, and it was terrible.
Oh, no.
It went really, really bad. I got shut down every day. The GC said, man, there's no way we can finish this job the way you're shutting me down. I just say that in preference. It was great having the past to the past scars from a future vertical build over an existing operating suite told me what not to do. And one thing I didn't do as good a job as I should have back then in those days was communication. So this operating team, Lisa mentioned the operating team, So we started day one. Guys, this is going to be a pretty big pill that we got to swallow to pull this off. Fortunately, the physicians, everybody in that hospital wanted these beds. So it wasn't like, somebody was, already had a bad attitude or something
Well, that's
like
really
that.
true. They support every service. So these new beds will support all the surgeries. So the rooms that we're operating in now are 120 square feet. And our new smallest room is 320. So, the amount of flexibility for lack of space will be resolved in this new build, which all the physicians were completely behind because they can do now procedures in the room where they can't do that now.
So we had the support of everybody in that hospital for these beds. So it wasn't like we were already going up against an obstacle. We didn't have that. But creating this operating team, creating the critical success factors. Now that, design and the way you go about design is evolved, changed. I don't know if it's gotten better or gotten worse. It just keeps changing. Everything changes. So critical performance improvement is now a steady state in healthcare. Everybody wants, an efficient process, and that's where that comes from. So we brought them in early. We brought physicians in early. We brought, all the departments that were going to be affected in early. I mean, a year ago, they knew that this was going to happen. So we developed the communication tree. All right, guys, this is how we're going to start the project. We actually sent out we sent out weekly emails to the physician staff and to other people that were going to be directly affected by this. If the northeast side of the operating suite was going to be, we're doing some work on the roof above it, they would know that this week or Monday at 7:30 hours, we're going to be doing some core drilling up there. You're going to know about it, and if we need to stop us, we gave them the process to do that properly. I think. And that made such a huge difference, having that communication train. And part of our operating team, too, that was different than anything else I've seen, is we had tremendous engagement from physicians. We assigned physicians to the operation team, 2 physicians particularly, and they were super engaged. They came to all the meetings. They let us know what was going to fly and not going to fly when it came to dealing with the physicians and how to communicate it. So it wasn't like, facilities going out to the doctors, telling them what they're going to do. In the inner circles of the physician meetings, the meeting behind, after the meeting and that kind of stuff, our physicians were lobbying for the success of this project, the disruption it would have. But hey, guys, we got to get through this, and this is how we're going to do it. The roof of the operating suite wasn't going to be the floor of the next patient floor on top of. We actually had an interstitial space so that we didn't have to do all the core drilling for plumbing and all the other arteries that come up and down vertically in the hospitals. We didn't start off with the interstitial space. It developed along with some other factors that made us develop that. So that's how we got the project kicking off pretty start. We had performance improvement, these critical success factors. It sounds like it's easy to come up with, but it's not.
That's why I was so impressed that they were so clearly defined when I came to the project, because it's not common.
You do not know all the hours that went into the tennis match between what does a good project look like in the end.
You have a great foundation, right? You had a lot of experts, a lot of really talented people who are your own staff, some consultants, the design team, and you get into the design process. And a lot of times people go into that process and they think they know what it needs to look like or how it should be designed. There's a lot of evidence out there, evidence-based design that helps inform some of these decisions. But even through that process, design is a practice, right? Some of it's trial and error. You have to explore things to find the right solution for you. So, what were the design aha moments during the project, and what were maybe some of the tools or tactics you used to come up with the right design solutions?
Well, one of the biggest aha moments was we were pretty far into design before the operations planning team started to define who was going to go on what floor in what unit. And once they did that, they started to track a patient. They started working on their flow mapping in and out of the tower. At this point, we flow map to the tower, but not what happens inside the tower. And so once we started looking at having really acute patients on the top floor, we would be discharging or moving them back into the 73 tower, we realized that you'd have to come down the elevators down to the 4th floor and transition through 2 active units across a bridge into another active unit to get back into the existing building, because we originally had the bridge for the project at the front of the building, which seemed totally logical because that's where we had existing conditions and that the building beneath it had column caps in place and was structurally capable of supporting a bridge. Operationally, that wouldn't work. Taking a patient through multiple active units, a steady stream would be disruptive for everybody on that path who is in that unit and the patient itself. So CaroMont came to us and said, what if we move the bridge? And I'm like, move it where? And they drew a line on a piece of paper and said, this is where it should be. And that location was flying over their existing laundry building. And we're like, okay, let's see what we can do. And we called our structural engineer, and he sort of was like, we're doing what now? But this is where I feel like having the conversations with the operational team is I can go back to our consultants and explain why the design needs to bend to the operations. And so, we talked through it architecturally and structurally about how complicated it was, but we found a way. We have now designed this bridge that instead of being at the front of the building, is at the back of the building, and it's anchored on our new building, and it flies over their existing laundry building. And then we're building a tower on the far side of the laundry building to support the bridge because it's actually L-shaped to tie into the existing 1973 tower at the 4th floor. And it's still a level transition, which was key for patient discharge and for getting logistics to and from the hospital. It came at the right point in design that we could talk about it, adjust for it, and accommodate it. And now, at this point, we just can't believe that we didn't always see that it had to be there. It just had to be there, and I'm really glad we got there. But that really took having a really well-rounded team to understand that, map it, and then be clear that it had to be that way so that the design team could accommodate it.
So that connection back to the original tower, that was a huge conversation, as Lisa's already mentioned, all the dynamics that went away with that. But that also deals with floor-to-floor height. So again, that gave this interstitial space another great advantage that was our buffer. That could be our, okay, I'm not locked and loaded, I want a level, I don't want a ramp, all these type of things. So we're able to use that interstitial space elevation to give us the exact height that we needed to tie into the existing hospital. A couple of things I wanted to mention that that I haven't mentioned yet that was sort of special about this build is one, even though they built this expansion for vertical expansion back in '98, they also built the mechanical space that would support the vertical expansion. So
Perfect.
we didn't have to build another mechanical room. I didn't have to stick units on the roof. I didn't do that. I already had the square footage in the sub-basement to support the electrical switchgear component or the electrical breakers and such, as well as the air handlers and additional pumps that we needed. So we already had that in place, which was great. Guys, it took months and months and months to do this vertical expansion because the seismic requirements have changed over the decades, and what was once designed to go X stories high is now designed to go X minus because everything's gotten more strict. So just how many floors could we go? We spent months trying to figure out how high we could go, just code-wise, to be able to pull this thing off. So we did. Actually, we maximized the vertical height that we could go, knowing that we'll never do this again. But we wanted as much operational space as we could to do that, and in doing that, that turned us to the high-rise code, which, okay, it's a pill you got to take. It's what you got to do to support the patient population in this tower. We recognized that. We knew that there'd be an expense associated with it, but it was actually, in my opinion, it's a small expense to pay day one that's going to support state-of-the-art, intensive care quality rooms for the next 50 years, those type of things. So
yeah, so the level transition at the 4th floor we set that as the datum.
Okay.
And so if you then consider the existing hospital, their floor to floor is 12'6".
Yeah.
And our new floor to floors are 15 feet. So if you set the fourth floor level and you set the next couple floors, that's how we trigger high rise. And we talked about it. You could take a whole floor off the building and not trigger high rise, but you think about 26 beds.
It was a lot of functionality.
That's a lot for the hospital. If they have, they have like 72 existing ICU rooms. We're going to almost double that in our new build. If you take out 26 beds, that's a lot of patient population, and that really defeated the purpose of their critical success factors. Mm-hmm. They're trying to really take their existing rooms and upgrade them in a way that is better for staff, patients, and the family. And 26 rooms, if you think of what that would cost to put in another tower somewhere else or to do a horizontal expansion eventually to accommodate that, it didn't really make financial sense if you consider the long-term implications versus just doing it now.
All kinds of stuff. Yeah.
And so the 4 floors level, we have 5 and 6, we trigger high rise, and we shelled the 3rd floor for a future 26 beds. And that left a buffer of about 10 feet between the OR roof.
You can't see my smile right now because I know what she's getting ready to say about that 10 feet. What is that, Lisa?
That is our interstitial space. And this interstitial space is like a crawl space in the sky. But the whole intent of it is really to provide that buffer between the ORs and the new build. We have used that interstitial space in so many ways. We use it to transition from a concrete build to a steel build. We use it to run all of our infrastructure down the building and then out so that nothing penetrates the OR ceiling. We put 2 inches of foam insulation on the roof and then covered it in marine grade plywood so that the ORs would have little impact for what was happening up above during construction. Other than tying into those column caps, we've kept everything off the roof. All the curtain wall and exterior sheathing is being installed with swing stages. We have purposely kept ourselves off the roof to minimize the impact on the ORs, but that interstitial space, our linen chutes in there, our sprinkler system, all of our waste or water, everything drops and then runs out. And so we put it to good use.
So yeah, that interstitial space is coming handy. I want to talk just a minute about, I don't want us to run out of time before we talk about this, but we wanted to build in flexibility with our patient rooms as well, relating to, all right, it's a critical care ICU, intensive care unit. FGI guidelines, you don't have to have a bathroom in an ICU room, these type of things. We were not going to build actually 78 beds. There's 3 floors that are being built out, 26 beds each, so that's 78 beds. We built these rooms with a lot of flexibility. Part of that flexibility is a shower and a toilet. So if we want to convert this 10 years from now, 20 years from now to a med-surg population, we got it.
Room standardization was key. And we had to make sure that the room we chose could function around the floor plate that was given to us by the existing build, that we could provide those standard
one thing
rooms.
I was a little disappointed about MPSN, they couldn't move those columns.
We did. We moved 2 columns.
You moved 2. How many we got? We got thousands of them. And you only moved 2? That was it? That's all you could do?
You know how you're in a design meeting and someone's like, let's move a column? You're like, you can't move columns. We actually were like, well, let's go see. So we did. We saved 8 patient rooms over the whole build by moving 2 columns.
In the midst of this, COVID happened, right? And everyone kind of paused and started to reevaluate, what changes they needed to make to their facility. So, you're in the process of this. What changes did you make to the design because of COVID?
We were in the early stages of DD when everyone was sent home to work remotely. And I think it's important to remember that the understanding of COVID has changed. So when we first went home, there was a lot of conversations about PPE, how to treat patients who have COVID, and then how to protect staff from COVID. And we do understand a bit more about that now. So one of the key things that we did architecturally, we're supporting the floor with some really simple things, but are actually important for staff. And that is we have dedicated PPE cabinets outside every pair of rooms. When we first proposed that on the project, it sort of was like, oh, that's a waste of space. And just because it's difficult to maintain PPE, who keeps track of what's in the cabinet
and stocking it
and keeping it stocked. But during COVID, that became a real logistical concern, and having it available for staff readily became very important. So our PPE cabinets came back and are bigger than we originally planned, but for good reason. Yep. And so we have that in place. We also planned for cameras in every room. So there's the ability for telehealth in every patient room. And then mechanically, we have the ability to turn any floor and any half floor negative to support a whole COVID wing, COVID floor, COVID building if we had to. So mechanically, we did adjust for that. Those are some of the key things that we took away. There are minor adjustments here and there. But those are some of the bigger things that came out of the conversations with staff who are treating COVID patients now, and how can the architecture and the MEP systems support what could be future pandemics or of the like, which in healthcare you have to face. That's the nature of the beast.
Lisa, Deon, thank you so much for participating today, for coming here. I think your knowledge and your experience is really insightful. I think it's helpful to other people who are considering doing the same thing or something similar. And thank you. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed doing this. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks for having us. We enjoy talking about this project.
Now it's time for the Pulse Check, where I recap key takeaways from today's episode. So our first one today is really pulling the right team together, creating alignment, and setting expectations on critical success factors. The second is creating open communication and collaboration with the team and using creative ways to solve problems like mock-ups. There's design for flexibility to maximize the investment and prepare for the unknown. And then I think finally, and Deon might get upset if I didn't mention this one, interstitial space. It's wildly helpful and a way to minimize impacts to services operating below the vertical expansion. If you have any questions about this episode, our contact information is located in the link in the description. Thank you for tuning in to Ideas Shaping Healthcare, an Idea Exchange production brought to you by McMillan Pazdan Smith Architecture and Advisors. McMillan Pazdan Smith Advisors creates customized, data-driven facility plans that guide your transformation over time and unites your stakeholders around shared priorities. Our experts provide an objective approach and comprehensive solutions. Find us through our link and contact us today.